everyone, and welcome to Writers Drinking Coffee. This is a podcast where writers sit around drinking tasty beverages to talk about writing, publishing, and the whole creative process. There will be rants and raves and opinions that may not agree but are lovingly delivered. We do not censor ourselves, so consider us PG-13. Today, your spirit-enabled guides are Chaz Brenchley and me, Jeannie Warner. This is episode 199, an interview with Richard Sparks. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you for having me, Jeannie. And hello, Chaz.
Hi.
You are here. This is a very near pinnacle, the penultimate episode of us getting to 200.
Absolutely. It's exciting.
I know. Well, congratulations. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Thank you. And for those of you listening at home, and we know how many you are over there in Australia and Ukraine, where we are oddly popular, you will notice there's a certain commonality of accent here.
Yeah, it's not just that we, Richard and I both hail from the UK, but apparently we both hail from Oxford.
Yeah, well, I'm the next one over. I'm from Gloucestershire, but I was at school in Oxford and then later at university there.
Yeah.
So I know the town inside out.
And I don't know if anybody has a precise mapping county by county of where the accents change. I'm sure there is one.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, the further north you go, the more peculiar it becomes. And then you get to Scotland.
Hang on. My mother was Scottish.
I know.
And I lived my adult life in Newcastle. So
I have Scottish family. I love regional accents. I just adore them. And one of the nice things about doing the audiobook of New Rock, New Roll, my new book, is I was able to do regional accents as well as an Australian accent, and an Asian American girl is one of our lead characters. I'm not quite so good at her, but my Australian's pretty good.
You read the whole
locals. My local English ones are fine.
I was going to say, welcome to being a gaming nerd, because I read your book, and honestly, only a complete nerd would be able to write such a magnificent story.
Oh, well, thank you. It credits to the designers and the creators of these amazing worlds that they've brought together to us to enjoy in the last couple of decades. They are such fun to just go and wallow in outer space, or Yakuza Japan, or the ones I love are the sword and sorcery worlds where magic is also part of the equation, and that's what fed through to my books. I was just wondering, what would it really be like to be this guy, this heroic young battle mage, in a world like this?
Now I sort of wondered about taking that boy and saying, to put him in each of the different 5e worlds, like here's Drax in Faerun, here's Drax in, I did the writing on Adventures in Oz. I would love to see Drax in Oz. That would be fabulous.
Dax is Daxx. Is no, yeah. Well, I mean, listen, he can go anywhere and do anything. I've now discovered my own universe. I couldn't believe my luck when the idea fell out of the sky and hit me on the head. Because what would it really be like to be this guy in a world like that? For real, not in a game. And there's only one way to find out, which was to write it. And of course, you'd be completely useless. You may be a hero, a world champion, as he was, winning the world championship of sword and sorcery with his two mates online. That's a lot different pushing a mouse and a keyboard around than it is wielding a real sword and being chased by wolves.
I have many friends that used to say, I need to take a break here. We're going on a guild raid at 7:30 every Thursday. And there's a lot of scheduling, and I respect that. But there are people that had planned difference for those of us that love the genre and everything about it. Like there's good old fashioned, we all remember Fiona of our Tapestry, right? In the Time of the Dark, where you have, humans from Earth that go off into these glorious fantasy realms. But I liked yours for being, what if a fantasy character goes into a different fantasy world? And was different.
Thank you. It's just a revelation. I mean, there he is, this retired schoolmaster, probably very thinly disguised version of me, mixed with perhaps my father, who was a schoolmaster, who spends his retirement gaming. And a lot of us who love adventures and don't have the knees for it anymore, you can do it online behind in the computer. So I completely free. I've got my own universe to play around in, and I stress it isn't a game. We've seen stories of people going into games. That's been done. This is nothing like that. He's just recreated it as his own avatar, and if he wants to find out why, he's got to survive. and a quest unfolds.
You
And
make him start as a beginner, though, and I liked that because I haven't seen. I mean, you did it a little faster than like Sheep Farmer's Daughter for the Deeds of Hexenary and Elizabeth Moon, but in this one, it's like, yep, he's crap. Yep,
yeah, he
this
would
is
be.
what a new fighter would look like facing a really good one. That was beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it was just obvious. My daydream. Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to be this heroic young battle mage? Beer-filled daydream one night, probably. And then you go, he'd be crap. He wouldn't have a clue what to do. And so the first thing, he's being chased by wolves and has to run away and like, hide up a tree, and then he's captured and sold into an army to be a recruit. And that's, of course, the first thing that happens in a game is the training sequence. So there's his training sequence. And by the time he's graduated, he's found one of his two mates. The Australian orc character, Grell, who's a lovely guy.
We
I'll
love
talk
Grell.
about it in a minute.
Love Grell.
But he still doesn't know where the third leg of the triangle is. Kreista, their DPS, their sword-wielding damage per second, dual-wielding sword dancer, I call her. And she's blisteringly good at what she does, and they really would need her if they're going to get anywhere, but they haven't found her yet at that stage of the book. And by the time they've graduated, Grell has gone from being a wimpy, bloody, useless orc to being the most fearsome thing you've ever seen with a battle axe. And our narrator is pretty good with a bow and arrow, even though he was a mage in his previous game. And what the hell's happened? Is there even magic here? So it unfolds over time. And it was a lot of fun finding the logic. What would really happen?
I actually liked the logic of it. And this is something we have discussed on many previous episodes of the logic and physics and magic systems. Like, how does magic work? Because, he had an expectation of, I do this. Oh, honey. Oh, honey. You don't just click a button up, like, and so
Yeah.
you make him have to learn the system and absorb and get a friend that knows the system too. And if that friend happens to be a piece of wood, jolly good, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that credit to my editor, the amazing Leslie Robin, who's the executive editor at Kasich, my publisher. She was the one who really said, look, it wouldn't come that easily to him. Back off a bit, when he discovers someone who helps him to get a magic staff, a couple of 100 pages into the book. He can't, he tries to cast and his spells sort of wobble and fail and are useless. He has to relearn. So as Grell had to relearn how to use a battle axe. And Kreista, when she comes along, the girl, she had to train in another environment before they find her, before she gets as good as she was.
I liked it, although, as some of us might actually be over 50 and also think of, the spells when I first learned how to play this game at age 12. We all wondered, Tenser's floating disc, how pointless is that? Now that our knees are gone and our backs are if you're like, yeah, okay, I can see Tenser's floating disc as being the best single fucking spell on the planet.
Well, yes.
That bag of holding, I mean, I just want stuff and I want to not have to carry it.
Well, yes. Well, unfortunately, there are limits, but yeah, you've got to, take only the equipment that you can carry and get good with your gear.
You know why girls were always more excited about bag of holdings than the guys?
Well,
Jazz figured it out in a minute.
Well, because it's Gucci designed. I don't know.
No. Oh, friend, no, it's a pocket. It is the pocket, capital T, capital P.
Yeah.
For all of us that can't stick our fingers down past our knuckles into our jeans pockets, bag of magic holding, the pocket. So.
Yeah, well, my guys have backpacks that their crafters make for them, which are bigger on the inside than on the outside, and can hold everything. So, they're great things. And I like the way that the equipment develops, and you'll discover in the second book that there's upgrading equipment all the time.
Yeah.
They think they can always get better, and what seems to be really good in one book is actually crap in the second one.
So let me back up just a little bit. How did you make the leap? Because for those listening that might not know this lovely man's name, there was a very famous monologue performed by Rowan Atkinson called The Schoolmaster, and you wrote it. And so I know you wrote a lot of TV and plays and, stuff that's, cued for lines. When you first made the jump, was this a short story? Did it just jump into your head as Zeus or Athena within the mind of Zeus? I'm going to write a novel now.
Oh, no, it came to it's definitely a novel. When I first started attempting to write narrative, all my previous efforts weren't good enough. I simply didn't know what to write. I knew how to write, but I tried all sorts of different approaches and never came up with anything particularly good or publishable. I mean, my agents would say, yeah, well, we'll try. This is perfectly decent. But it was until I started doing fantasy, which is this book, is that I absolutely found the groove. And this is what I've been waiting my entire life for. I mean, like my old friend Douglas Adams is an exact contemporary of mine. He was writing his fantasy fiction in the 1970s. He started, and I knew him before he'd even thought of Hitchhiker. I first heard of that in a pub when I was on a date. I walked up to the bar to buy drinks for my date and myself, and there was Jeff McGivern. And I said, "Oh, Jeff, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm very well. Douglas has written a radio series and I'm in it." I said, "Oh, really? What's it called?" He said, "A Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy." And I thought, bloody well, what a weird title. And I thought, oh, what a great title, Jeff. Bye. And as I scuttled back to my date, it was our first date. I didn't want a handsome young actor coming over and getting in the way.
Right.
And so
handsome young actors make notoriously bad wingmen.
they're not very good gooseberries, no. But then my writing partner, Gail Renard, was also Douglas Adams's sketch partner, and they did comedy sketches together. Gail's a very, very good writer. And she trumped me this story just a few weeks ago when I was in London. I was telling her this, and she said, "Oh, I first heard about Hitchhiker. Douglas came over, and he said, I've just been hitchhiking around Greece. I wonder what it'd be like to hitchhike around the galaxy." And Gail said, "Oh, come on, Douglas, you've got a sketch to write. Concentrate." So, it goes back all the way. But I just did not have the luck to find my groove, this idea that fell out of the sky on June the 1st, less than 5 years ago. And when it did, I thought, oh, at last, I've waited my entire life for this. And this is what I'm going to do, keep writing until I either drop or run out of ideas. But there's such a universe out there. There's so many things available to me that I'm hoping I can keep. I'm in the middle of book 5 at the moment. Let's hope we can finish that and move on to book 6.
Well, it was something that I did love, because in the beginning, I took this for standard. It is a beautiful trope at first, and I love the trope, so I just was able to jump in and wade in with no problem whatsoever. I mean, it's like NPCs, death by cliche. I love all of those. But then at the very end, I love that you threw me a twist. That is it fantasy or is it science fiction? And
well,
that changed everything.
Thank you. I mean, it needed an explanation. The first thing that I thought of, wow, this idea is amazing. How does it turn out? How does it happen? So the first thing you have to do when you come up with any story is figure out the ending. Not necessarily the ending of the plot, but where does it land? What's the emotional ending? What's the explanation for anything? And you have to do that at the end of every story. I said, well, the explanation became obvious to me when I worked it out. And so I sort of hid it along the way. And now we're set up for go anywhere.
Yeah.
If you look at maps in role-playing games, well, you first of all you explore one map, and then when you've cleared that map, you go off to the next country, the next realm. So the sequel is called New Rock, New Realm. Guess what? They go off to another realm on the map and have more adventures there and more problems to face.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some of us that were sitting there through it all at figuring, okay, is this 5e or is it Pathfinder or is it Champion? I mean, because, numbers geeks, which set of numbers is involved here? But by the end of it, you realize that it doesn't really quite matter, does it? And
no, it doesn't. It's just an excuse for having adventures. I'm
waiting for him to get dropped into a World of Darkness, one where it's all, can Daxi do well when there's, vampires and fae and werewolves?
Well, yeah. I mean, he faces a lot of challenges, and all of the above.
Does he get to take his newly developed skills with him?
Well, fine. We don't get to know that.
Well, spoiler alert. He's
Spoilers.
Well, he's kind of, if you think about it, he's sort of getting better, isn't he?
Yes,
if it was still a game, which it's not, it's real life, you would say he's leveling up.
Well, and more importantly, he has learned how to learn. He's learned that there's going to be a device and we're going to have to figure out what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And what would you rather do? I mean, when they're talking about it, when the three of them are finally meet and are talking about what's happened to them, they're saying, well, this is what we're good at. I mean, would you go back if you could? There is no going back, as far as we know. But would you no? And they say, but no, I'd far rather be here. This is much better than my old life.
Well,
And
there's
that's,
part of me that says it's like, so if I could get away from my, the artificial knee, the plantar fasciitis, my hands have started to hurt. Could I just be some young, hot, incredibly capable 20-something that can cast spells?
yeah, wouldn't that be great? And
Yeah,
by the way, if you have planar fasciitis, I have an exercise that cured mine, so I'll pass that on to you later.
it's just a latest flare up.
Oh, okay.
But thank
All
you.
right. My pleasure. This stuff comes to get us all in the end, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does. It does. I mean, years ago when I was playing on a Dune mush, it was
Yeah.
based on the world of Frank Herbert, and it was Dune 2, for those of you who may out there that may have played on Dune 2. And I had this lovely character from House Atreides that I was enjoying hanging out with. And I was like, I should meet you sometime. He's like, I'm sorry. He says, I'm a 50-year-old man living in Australia, and my son tells me that the odds of you being a 15-year-old Korean boy are very high. Like,
But
your
that's
son
why
is not
that
wrong.
was really something I was absolutely firstly. I've got to avoid finding out who are these people in real life. You only know the narrator. You know who he
That was
was.
exactly where I went, and I felt Krista's feelings very strongly. And can I speak for a moment about how much I loved that girl?
Yeah, she's everyone loves Crease, and also obviously everyone loves Esmeralda and Marnie. I love writing for women. They're an underused resource. I've always written for women, plays that I've done and adaptations. They're just so much richer to write for because most male writers ignore them. And that's a stupid overstatement.
Or write
But
them badly. And I was going to say, I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into Krista's psychology, if I may be so bold.
Please go ahead.
As a female playing on these games, when suddenly people see you, they automatically snug you or hug you or all of these other little things that is even virtual, is personal touching that people don't necessarily want.
Well, that's a little bit forward, and I think that's you
and
should allow people their
everything
space
about you and who you are because you're a girl, right?
Yeah.
I literally somebody years ago cyber stalked me, figuring out my ISP and where I was, and I don't know what friends he had, but I one day had a videotape that tells you what year it was appear in the mail to me of this man talking to himself about how wonderful and how happy we were going to be together, and I was obliged to send it back to the Clearwater Police Department and say, you have a problem and this one is yours to go.
Jeez. Well, that is the lure and the danger of fantasy. We love it, the what ifs, and we trip out on it. And some people take it very, very seriously.
Yes.
Well, we love her. And I've got to tell you, there was a female reader who wrote to me and said, I just love Krista. She was great. And why did you drop her out of the story for so long? Because I couldn't wait for her to come back in. She was very happy. I said, well, did you forgive me when she came back? Yeah, that's fine, it's fine. But I just kept waiting for her. Well, the reason you do that is you can't have all your characters going around in a clump together. Yeah. In the second book, in New Rock, New Realm, they all go in different directions. So that's not told in first person as the first book is. They got 4 different quests to do to complete in order to come back together to solve the main problem. So Krista goes one way, and Ola the thief goes one way, and Grell goes one way, and Dax goes another. So our narrator, very important. You can't have people just in a big group wandering about. So I explained to her that Krista was the one who, and I needed also to protect her. This is quite important, even though that she is a kick-ass warrior. I mean, and also you don't mess with her in a flame war. I say that her tongue is as sharp as her blades, but they arrive and they're useless in this new world is the premise. So an unprotected girl all by herself in a new world, I couldn't have her being drafted into the army, an all-male army, for example. So I needed to hide her. When she comes out and she explains what happened and how she got so good and how she trained and is now an expert again and can look after herself, no problem. That solves that problem of her being a possible victim. which I would not like to write.
I was actually expecting that, somewhere in here you might have a little novella that you sneak out into the internet called The Book of Krista.
Well, that would be good, wouldn't it? That'd be lovely.
Excellent.
Because it's a little bit of, I liked the overview of where she went. It was sort of Eastern martial artsy, very, sort of origin Batman kind of thing.
It'd be totally fun to write it.
Yeah.
And publish it.
Plus, you can have all of her real life expectations of, oh my God, dealing with boys and gamers and this and that, and sort of give that sort of nod to the girls online. And
yeah, indeed, and she could actually remember that. People think, oh, you're a girl and harassing her, and she could say, oh, if that guy turned up now, he'd get a bit of a shock. I'd shove this sword up him, So she doesn't take shit from anyone, and. So anyway, she's definitely a favorite character, and there are developments that happen to her that are really interesting. As to the others, there's one. I mean, this is a spoiler for book 2. There's one chapter called "The Warrior's Apprentice."
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you that Krista's got a tag along.
Yep.
And a young girl that they rescue, and Krista takes her under his wing and her wing, and they're off. Floundering about in the middle of difficulties, but she's got someone to look after and someone to teach.
Excellent.
And she's lovely. It's great.
And I think it helps that you have a background in writing comedy, because your delivery of comedy in this is solid. There are many people that try to throw comedy or something funny into high fantasy, and let's be gentle and say with varying degrees of success, but yours are actually funny, and I appreciated that too, because humor's hard. It is.
Yeah, it is hard. It's either natural to you or it's something that takes a while to learn and get the hang of. To me, comedy and adventure are natural bedfellows, because comedy is not nice people telling jokes. That's a dinner party. Comedy is fear and pain and loathing and misery and betrayals and things going wrong and people falling into puddles. And what good adventure isn't full of all that? So they naturally fit. And so when you come to a place like the time where they meet the first orc that they meet, they're running away, as you know, from they've deserted from the army with Esmeralda, who they're trying to help her solve her quest. And they meet this orc coming down the hillside, a female orc, Clara, who's saying, "What the hell are you doing on our land?" And it turns into quite the most interesting love scene, shall we say, that I've had the joy of writing.
I thought that
it makes people laugh.
Tasteful, well-drawn sex scene I've ever seen displayed or hinted about in a book. So thank you. That was fun.
That's great. I mean, I suppose actually in real life it would win the Bad Sex Award, but as writing, it's great fun. And people they say, "I love it." That's just, that's fun. And it's a pleasure to bring comedy alive, because what world wouldn't have comedy in it? It doesn't make any sense.
A phrase in comparison for those that have read like a bunch of other writers. There is 2 pages where Ursula Vernon describes a character that has never really ridden a horse before, having to get up and ride a horse for, do the daily adventure of, everybody jumps on horseback, etc. If you can read it out loud without crying, laughing, you're a better man than I, Gunga did.
Oh, lovely. Of course.
But that level of thing is like this is the sort of sex scene that I almost want to read aloud at a party and say, they who can keep from laughing out loud don't have to pay a drink penalty or something, because it's beautiful.
Well, I'm going to Norwestcon next week, and
that is the scene you should read.
No, actually, that's the scene that's the free giveaway scene on my website, so you can get that one and read it for free. But the audio chapter, it's just richardsparks.com, no E in Sparks. But the audio chapter I read on the website is the one that I read aloud at readings, and it always gets a lot of laughs, because it's actually the chapter before that where they're on the run, and there's that ridiculously bad poem written by the stable boy who's madly in love with Esmeralda. Of course, everyone's in love with Esmeralda because she's the loveliest life there ever was or ever will be. That's her blessing and her curse.
But
and there's this dreadful poem.
Part of that.
Yeah, of course. And Ola, the street rat thief, thinks it's the best poem he's ever heard, and Esmeralda thinks it's bollocks. And there's this great sort of literary argument in the rain as they're trying to escape, on the run, about the merits of proper poetry. It's proper poetry because it's got twir in it. And
Good God, I'm more than anything in the world suddenly this was an aside of something that happened just today. You and Chaz and I need to go to New York because apparently there's a whole musical devoted to romance in the Oxford comma.
No.
I
Well,
know.
eats, shoots, and leaves. That one. No, it's
Exactly. Well, no, it's not that one, but exactly. But the description, I'll throw it in the notes and send it to you in advance.
Oh God, how
I was
cool!
hurting laughing.
Yeah.
It's for everybody that's ever editor.
Thank you.
So,
I'll put that on my bucket list. Yeah, but it's fun making people laugh. There's a scene. When I got to this scene in book 4, I was just going, God, I wish I could read this to everyone. There's a scene where there's just this prank that is played by. Do you remember Narek and Horm, the two woodskin?
yes,
They're kind of
yes,
like
I
my
do.
elves. They come back in book 3 and 4. They become great characters. I really love those two guys. They're funny. They're like
Nibelungen, right?
they're Nibblins. They're great, salt of the earth British double act comedy. One's chirpy and won't stop talking, the other one's taciturn and grumpy, and together they have great arguments. But they do a prank on Grell the orc and Ola the towny thief who's never been out in the countryside really before, until they take him to the back of Beyond, which is just. It was a pleasure to write. I hope people enjoy reading it.
You're already on book 4.
This is something I wanted to ask about. Do you feel any kind of a loss? Because I mean, your work has mostly been about public performance, and you can be there, you can hear the laughter, you can feel the response. But with books, you don't know until people tell you. You never get to hear them laugh at your jokes.
That's interesting. I never thought of that. I just wrote to Stephen Fry, the great British comedy writer and also wonderful writer, who did the Sherlock Holmes books as audio books, 60 hours of just glorious. He's such a great reader. And I know him, so I wrote him an email and said, well done. And he said, oh, it's so nice. You're just in the studio by yourself. It's nice to know that there's somebody out there occasionally.
Exactly.
And he's he did the Harry Potter books, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's just a big star. But
I didn't know he'd written. See, that's another thing I have to go and look up because I love Stephen Fry.
Yeah.
I love, he's perfect.
The Sherlock Holmes stories, I didn't know them. They're just beautiful. He's also written a book about the Greek myths. I'm nearly finished, called Mythos, which he reads. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. There's a difference. To answer your question, is when you go and see a show where everyone's laughing at what you've written, that's wonderful. And you're sitting, especially when they're all rocking backwards and forwards at different times. If they're all doing it together, it's quite good. But if one's going forward and one's going backwards, and it's just chaos, that's when it's really lovely. That's great, but that's not you. They're laughing at us, at them.
Okay.
The actor on the stage who brings it all to life and does things with your words that you'd never conceived of. You go, how do they think of that? These guys they're so good, the best actors I've worked with. They really make you look good. And but the difference between that and writing narrative is it's just me and the reader.
Yeah.
Or me and the listener. So it's my voice purely all the way through it. And of course, when you read it to yourself, you'll do your own voice in your head. You'll do different voices for the characters, perhaps. Or if you were reading it aloud to a child, you would put on different voices. So it's very different. I don't actually miss that. I actually prefer writing narrative because I think it's the highest form of writing there is narrative fiction. Possible with poetry. Yeah, proper poetry.
Wait. Are you saying that doggerel doesn't count? Because,
Oh, I love doggerel. I'm a great fan of William McGonagall. I write doggerel. There's doggerel in my books deliberately. There's high poetry. There's dreadful poetry.
I think David Gerald out there is writing all of us on his Patreon at least a bad limerick a week, so.
Well, bad limericks, yes, I can do those. And of course, I've written a lot of lyrics for songs and operas and stuff. So I love the form, the prosody is what it's called, towards the song, creative structures. I'm not a fan of word salad poems where I have to do all the work as the reader. I like the writer to do the work, and to present something, a fully formed thing that is a present to the reader. It's the writer's job to do the work. I firmly believe that. But writing narrative to me is absolutely the highest. So I'm more thrilled because it's really much purer. It's just me and the reader, where as a play, that's an actor's medium. Film is a director's medium.
Yeah.
Opera is a singer's medium, a composer's medium.
This is why I have never worked in theatre or film or TV or anything, and I never will, because yeah, I'm a writer. I want words on the page, and I want readers, and I don't want to be collaborating with half a dozen other crafts.
Okay, well, fair enough. And I think that's really good to know your groove and to stick to it.
Yeah.
I would say, though, in the words of Sir Arnold Bax, the great British composer and conductor,
Yes.
you should try everything in life once except incest and folk dancing. So
Hey, I like folk dancing.
I know I told this to friends of mine. So we play at folk dances every week. You know, he plays the banjo, she plays the bass,
Yeah.
and it's great fun. It's a joke that Sir Arnold Bax was making, but try. It's wonderful when people speak your words and the audience loves it. There's another thing is that there was one play I did. It was an adaptation of a Goldoni Commedia dell'arte comedy at the Welsh National Theatre, as it was in those days. And there's one moment where the actor stood on stage staring at the audience, the character clearly not knowing how to get out of the mess he was in.
Yeah.
And the audience was weeping with laughter for like 30 seconds, a minute sometimes, some nights. And the other actor on stage was John Rhys Davies, from Indiana
yeah.
Jones, and he played Gimli in The Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
He's a Welsh actor, he's a wonderful actor. And he was sitting there on stage as the police inspector in his white suit at his desk, scribbling notes frantically, while Philip Manicum, the other actor, was just tortured with insecurity about how to answer the question that the fierce policeman had asked him, because whatever he said, it's going to insult the policeman, and he's terrified. And he just found this minute, and I'm sitting there in the audience going, I didn't write that. That's amazing. Goldoni didn't write it 300 years earlier. So actors, it's great to work with other people. I would say, Chas, try it if you get the chance, but you don't have to.
Well, monologues are a thing. But I had a question here, starting with process, if you don't mind. You say you're already on book 4, which is magnificent. Do you consider yourself a planner, a plotter? Somebody do you outline, or are you more of the organic gardener of, I'm going to just see where this goes?
You have to do both. Absolutely convinced. There are writers who plot and outline. I was just talking the other day about P.G. Wodehouse. He did 450 pages of notes for his books, and he's the great comic master of the 20th century. If it's good enough for him, well, the rest of us should listen. But I explore the story as it goes along, and I also create outlines as I'm going along. So the outline may have huge gaps in it, but it may have, this has got to happen at the end. This is one of the stages we've got to get to. This logic needs to be sorted out. And then you rock backwards and forwards. All stories about story structure. That's the most important thing of writing, setup and payoff. So when you're going along, you might find, oh, yeah, that's interesting, but I haven't set that up. I got to go back to the beginning. And if that pays off, then I've got some work to do. So laying pipe, setting your breadcrumbs, and making sure that the payoff is not just logical, but a surprise.
Hang on, to say that story is structure, that's a screenwriter's approach.
Of course it is. Every story is about structure. It's about setup and payoff. You try being a detective writer who doesn't know who's done it. All right. So do you know who done it?
No, I know. I rarely know what they've done. I'm of that school that give me a title and a first line, and preferably a last line. So I have a direction, I have a goal, and I will just start writing.
Well, good for you. But and sometimes you go down paths that are wrong, and you have to backtrack, and that didn't work. And sometimes you go paths that are right. Good. Well, then you've got.
The thing is, I've been doing this forever. So all my skills are instinctual now, and
that is true. That is very true. You do hone your instincts. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and I wouldn't presume to tell anyone else how to write. What I say is, I write both. I fly by the seat of my pants, and I have outlines that grow alongside me as I'm writing them. And it's very important to have story structure. As you will get to the end of your books, Chas, you'll look back and you go, yeah, that holds together. That's logical. I've led them up the garden path, given them a nice surprise at the end, and they'll go, you got me. Of course. Yes, absolutely.
Well,
So
it's also the figuring out of where do the pieces fit together. And
yes.
I feel like for those of us that really enjoyed the recent Glass Onion tour, Benoit Blanc series, I like those because those seem to reintroduce a whole new generation to something that was older. Now, I used to read Nero Wolfe, and I found that as much as I wanted to love him as a purist, he gets very, very tedious. And it was the new fellow who took him over did Nero Wolfe better than Nero Wolfe did. So,
Well, I think there's always improvements going on, and some writers last the test of time, some don't. And this is actually kind of an interesting topic we could get into, but I would say that planning is great, and if you can allow yourself to step back and go, well, what's really good to look overview of the whole thing, what's going on here, what does it need? And then, I've actually in the fifth book now, so I've been able to go back into the earlier books and lay pipe for the later ones. Because the first
there's one that there's this, they're from Ayleswood, or I forget the word of it, but used it like 5 times. Oh, Ayleswood. So secretly, I'm just dying to find out what that town means.
Well, you may be lucky. Indeed, yes. I'm very lucky to be able to spend so much time laying little seeds that I've exploited in later books.
Well, I'll tell you one of the things, one of the drawbacks of writing lengthy series and publishing as you go without having the luxury of having 3 or 4 books written before you publish the first one is that by book 2 you are committed to everything you wrote in book 1.
You're stuck. Absolutely. I was really, really lucky because I wrote the first book in a burst of creativity. It's 2 months to write 160,000 words. Now,
Wow.
the caveat is there's been a ton of rewriting, a lot of editing, and I've got a fantastic editor at Kasich. I went through 3 editors, and I hired 2 to help me get it in shape because I love the editing process. I've done it as a script editor a lot, and it's where you get the gold. But the first two months, absolute creative burst. And I thought, I just started writing for the fun. And after a week, I thought, well, I'll send it to my agent, see what she thinks. So it always takes agents a couple of months at least to read something, even if it's at the top of their pile. And so when she called up, I was already onto the second book. And it was one of those phone calls, you just don't, the one you always want to have, where she's, I had to pull over at the side of the road and she was going, this is exactly what people are looking for. It's escapism from the wretched world we're in. And it's fun and it's amusing. So I said, well, I'm already on book 2. And she said, oh, okay, 3-book deal. I said, oh, three is it now? Anyway, by the time we got going, I said, look, just hold off on sending it out to market. Let me get ahead of everything here. Let me get the first 3 done. And then I was on to the 4th. And in a way, the 4th kind of completes the story. I was a story. And I was talking to one of my test readers about this, about book 4. And because he's about to read that. And he said, oh, I love it when a series comes to an end. I said, well, it's not come to an end. Don't worry about that. But it's complete. If I was to die without completing book 5, it would be satisfactory as it stands. But I still want to go on and find out what happens next, and then this and that. Keep writing them. So I was lucky enough to be able to have this lead-in time before anything was published, because once it's published, once the proofs are signed off on, you're stuck. That's what you got. And there's no escape.
Because I was so mad when Katie Murphy was writing book 4, like finally the Guildmaster series, and I read it and I did the end. I immediately went on like, Katie, what the fuck? This is not I'm 120 pages from the end, and there's no way you can tie this up. And I got this. I'm very, very sorry.
Well, you've got to. Yes, you have to deliver. I'm afraid you can't just keep people dangling forever.
The gun is on the mantelpiece.
You have to. Yes, every story should complete, and they all do in my books. But what I've got is an open world that I can go anywhere in and do anything with. So, and it becomes more difficult. The odd thing is, I teased Douglas Adams about this. He was sitting in the back garden of our house in LA while he was sort of trying to get Hitchhiker the film off the ground, because he and Jane, his wife, had moved to Santa Barbara. And Jane was at Oxford with me, and Douglas was at Cambridge at the same time. So we all met when we were students. And Douglas really didn't like writing. He was brilliant, but he'd rather do anything else,
Yeah.
including playing video games, by the way. He was a very early adopter. And I said to him, Douglas, if I'd written something as brilliant as Hitchhiker, you wouldn't see me for dust. I'd keep churning them out. And he sort of stiffened and said, "Oh, it's not as easy as that." I now know what he meant. I just take my hat off to the guy. The first book took 2 months. The second took 7 months. The third took a year. The fourth took a year and a quarter. I'm floundering around in the early stages of book 5 still, 9 months later. I've got quite a lot of idea of what's going on and where, but it's eluding me in some way, and I'm just keeping at it. And it's not as easy as that. So Douglas, as he often was right about that.
Oh, I hate it. People are insufferably right about things. Have you thought about other genres, other worlds, other opportunities? Have we opened the creative dam of writing novels now?
No, this is it. I've got to stick with I've got an entire universe here. This is the groove, fantasy with a lot of amusement and comedy. And it's interesting what Julia, my agent, said. All the funny fantasy comes out of England. Douglas and Terry Pratchett and people like that. And it's true. Neil Gaiman's quite funny when he puts his mind to it, as well as being brilliant. And we do seem to have that comic vein in us. So this suits me absolutely down to the ground. It's the two things that I love, and I just hope I can keep going. And if I get book 5 finished the way I've got the first 4 done, then I will head on to book 6.
Excellent. Is there any? I feel like we've had lots of advice for a new writer here, but if there's somebody that said, I love gaming, maybe I would try writing, etc., what sort of advice would you give them?
Do it, because you can always discover that you might like doing something else instead. Like, for example, actors. There was a young actress in England who's a family friend, and she came to me after leaving university. The day I was going to come back to America, her aunt said to me, she's really good. I've seen all her plays and she wants to be an actress. So I said, well, send her over. And so we had a couple of beers, and I said, look, there's only one reason for being an actress, and that's if you really, 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 really have to. And her whole face changed. She said, yes, somebody gets it. I have to do this.
Right.
And even if you go into something like acting and you come out the other side years later, you've got a whole lot of skills that really stand you in great stead for public speaking, for any public-facing job. Your confidence level, your presentation, the way that you learn to handle yourself and take rejection. So definitely go for it. If you want to write, give it a try. I regret all the years I didn't write because I didn't know what I was meant to be writing. And I'm thrilled that I've actually found it now. So yeah, this is what I'm going to keep doing.
All right. So New Rock, New Realm coming out soon, I presume. When do you?
I think they're planning on November 2024, but that's yet to be confirmed. Yeah, and of course the free samples at richardsparks.com. You can check it out there and get free audio of me reading it to you, or excuse me, or a free chapter.
Well, we will show the link out there, along with all the other fascinating things we discussed today during this episode on our website, which is www.writersdrinkingcoffee.com. Thank you, Richard. This was tremendously fun.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else you want me to say? Do you have another second?
I always have another second. That's
Okay.
the joy of self-producing and having nobody else to answer to.
I just got email from my assistant who's in London. She went out on the street with a professional cameraman and a cosplay actor dressed as Grell, our orc, in the book. Because we had cosplay people at the book launch party in London in December. And they were great. They never broke character. He was wonderfully Australian and very funny. And he went out on the street in London, and she filmed little video clips for TikTok, put them out this morning. And she said, we've already had 2,000 views.
Wow.
Like within a couple of hours. What's an orc doing in London? That's it. What is the TikTok? I think her handle is at New Rock New Roll, ROLE. So you can check out that, or Instagram. But it's amazing how the world is like that these days.
It is. And we would be delighted to feature her links and anybody else's if you want to send them to us.
I certainly will. Thank you.
Include it in the liner notes. So for any of you who want to follow Richard Sharp or Sparks.
Wait a minute.
I believe I just said that.
Richard Sharp, he's the guy that Bernard
Richard
Cornwell
Sharp.
writes.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, he's not, Sharpie can't be dead because there was the Frankenstein Chronicles. So he'd be wandering around undead even to this day. But
I intend to do the same myself.
you and me both. Can I have your brain when you're dead? I mean, no reason.
Well, I won't need it.
Exactly. But truly, thank you very much for coming and spending your time with us today. This has been very fun.
Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Chaz. It's been great fun chatting with you.
And everybody,
And I'm thrilled that you love the book. That really is just makes me feel great.
I did. Everybody needs to rush right out and buy New Rock, New Roll. I will put a link. You've been listening to Writers Drinking Coffee, a labor of love and enthusiasm put together by the hosts. Our main web magic is cast by Deirdre Schween, and our sound engineer and backup web spiders are Dave Welsh and John Schmidt. Our intro and exit music is performed by Michael Langberg, who lives down under at manyhatsmusic.com. Our podcast sponsors are Jackal Designs Down Under, The Bean Scene in California, Arm Street in Ukraine, and anywhere that you really enjoy sitting and reading a good book. And hey, thanks for listening.